If you're a landlord or a tenant here in Colorado, you need to listen up, because the rules of the game are about to change in a really big way. A whole new set of laws is rolling out for 2025, and they're going to completely reshape the housing landscape across the state. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what's changing, why it's all happening now, and most importantly, how you can get ready.
We've got it broken down into 5 key areas. First, we'll talk about the why behind this whole rental reset. Then, we'll dive into the new rules for leases, the updated eviction process, some major changes to rent and applications, and finally, we'll get into the practical steps for how landlords and tenants can prepare.
So why all these changes and why now? Well, these laws didn't just appear out of thin air. They're actually a direct response to some very real challenges in Colorado's housing market, things like soaring rental prices and the kind of economic pressures that have made finding and keeping stable housing a huge concern for so many people.
So what are these new laws actually trying to achieve? Well, the main goals are pretty clear. They want to enhance housing stability so people aren't living with the constant worry of losing their home. They're trying to strengthen tenant security, prevent those sudden, shocking rent hikes, and ultimately create what lawmakers hope will be a much more fair and balanced rental market for everyone.
All right, let's dive into the first major area of change, the new rules for leases. The big idea here is all about creating way more clarity and fairness right from the very beginning of a rental relationship.
And the shift here is pretty significant. Before 2025, lease terms could sometimes be a bit vague, and there weren't a ton of rules about making changes in the middle of a lease. But now, all that's changing. Leases have to include mandatory clauses and disclosures, things like crystal clear terms for security deposits and info on tenant rights. The takeaway is simple. Ambiguity is out and explicit written agreements are in.
This new focus on formality extends to any changes during the lease, too. If a landlord wants to change something, they can't just mention it in passing anymore. They have to follow this clear 4-step process. Propose it in writing, give the tenant time to review it, get the tenant's written consent, and then officially document that change. So yeah, verbal agreements for modifications, those just won't cut it anymore.
Next up, let's talk about something that's absolutely critical for both landlords and tenants, the eviction process. The updates here are changing the timeline and providing a lot more structure and, frankly, more rights for tenants who are facing eviction.
And if there's one number you're going to remember from this, it's this one, 14. Landlords now have to give tenants a written notice to quit at least 14 days before they can even file for eviction. This extra time is specifically designed to give tenants a better chance to either fix the problem or, if it comes to it, find another place to live.
For landlords, this means some new procedural duties, like having to use state-approved forms and providing a very specific written reason for the eviction. But for tenants, it means some powerful new rights. They can now contest an eviction in court without fearing retaliation, and, this is a big one, they can use unresolved habitability issues, like a broken heater the landlord never fixed, as a real legal defense in court.
Okay, let's talk money. This next section covers the whole financial side of renting, from how properties are advertised all the way to how much rent can go up. And the big theme running through all of it is transparency.
This new rule is all about truth in advertising. It basically means no more vague or misleading listings. Landlords are now required to be totally upfront about the full cost of a rental property right from the get-go. The ad has to clearly state the rent, the security deposit, and any other fees a tenant might run into. No more surprises.
Another key idea to get your head around is uniform screening criteria. So what does that actually mean? Well, it means a landlord has to decide on their standards for tenants, like income requirements or credit history, and then apply those exact same standards to every single person who applies. They also have to disclose what those criteria are, which is a huge step toward preventing discrimination and just making the application process fair for everybody.
And here's a big one for anyone who's ever gotten that heart-stopping letter about a massive rent increase. The new laws are going to impose limits on how much a landlord can raise the rent each year for their existing tenants. The goal here is pretty simple. Prevent those shocking price hikes and bring some much-needed predictability and stability to a tenant's housing costs.
So, with all these changes coming down the pike, how in the world do you prepare? Well, our final section here is all about actionable advice and the resources that are out there to help you navigate this whole transition.
For landlords, preparation is absolutely key to staying compliant. Some great places to start are organizations like the Colorado Apartment Association and official government sources like the Colorado Department of Local Affairs. And honestly, it's probably a really smart move to talk to a lawyer to get your lease agreements reviewed and updated so they meet all these new requirements.
And for tenants, knowing your new rights is really your most powerful tool.
You can turn to groups like Colorado Legal Services for legal advice, especially if you're low income, and organizations like the Rocky Mountain Tenants Association for advocacy and education. These resources are there to help you understand this new landscape.
So after all of that, what's the single biggest takeaway? Well, it really all boils down to two things: proactive education and open communication. Whether you're a landlord or a tenant, taking the time to understand these new rules and just talking through any issues is what's going to create a smoother and hopefully more respectful rental environment for everyone.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. As Colorado's rental market adjusts to all these new laws, what's ultimately going to be more important for creating a better system for everyone? Is it going to be the improved communication that these laws are trying to encourage? Or is it the stricter regulations themselves? That's a question we'll all get to see answered in the years ahead.